We're very lucky to be joined on the show once again today by one of our favorite people, Abelina Sabrina. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Glad to have you here. So we're gonna talk about a video that you released recently called My Pregnancy that's generated a lot of attention, both a lot of people watching it as well as a lot of news articles talking about what you discuss in the video. So everybody watching this, feel free to pause the video and go watch the video. It's available at Sabrina's YouTube channel. But can you tell us basically why you decided to make this video and what you talk about in it?
Sure. So this video, I uploaded it on the anniversary of the day that my pregnancy almost killed me. It's changed my life for the worse ever since. And the inability to talk about it was probably the worst part. So I just, it's been long enough. The anniversary was coming up. I mean, this is something that I have thought about every single day since it happened. So I thought now would be as good a time as ever.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about the content of it? I mean, you say that it nearly killed you. Like that's obviously horrendous. Have to go.
Sure. Yeah. So the reason why it nearly killed me was because the pregnancy turned out to be ectopic, and parts of why. And while ectopics are certainly they have the potential to be fatal, they don't have to be. And so every step of the way, because if there's anything ever wrong with me, if I'm sick, I make sure that like I go to the doctor, I get second opinions. But every step of the way, I was being second guessed by medical staff, by my partner. My hormones in my body were confusing me as to what I should do, because as soon as I found out that I was pregnant, my goal was to terminate the pregnancy. And I took every step that I could to do that. But even in a blue state like California, it's still kind of hard to get done. So yeah, just if I feel like if I had a little bit more support, and if doctors and nurses or anybody who knew, if anybody took the pain that I was experiencing seriously, then the ectopic pregnancy could have been caught before it ruptured inside of me. And that was the part that nearly killed me.
Yeah, and look, no matter what, even if you had instantaneously all of the support that you wanted, that was gonna be a terrible thing to have to go through and a dangerous thing to have to go through. But you didn't, which made it far worse. I saw in the comments quite a few people and people talking about on Twitter that they hadn't even really been familiar with ectopic pregnancies or how they're diagnosed, what actually happens. So I think that it's very helpful, a bit of a silver lining that people are learning about this. It might help other people to diagnose it. But the thing is with the doctors and the nurses, like you describe in detail in your video about telling them about what you're experiencing, the different symptoms, the pain, these are not, they're not incredibly common, but they're not like Dr. House level rare. Why is it that nobody thought, well, maybe this is consistent with an incredibly dangerous thing that happens, and they just didn't trust you, even when you described, the worst pain that you ever experienced in your life?
I don't know why I kept getting dismissed, because in hindsight, after I've done like more research on ectopic pregnancies, which I don't know if people aren't familiar, an ectopic pregnancy is when the fertilized egg is not in the uterus. So in my case, and one of the most common cases, it was in the fallopian tube. And so when I was going to the doctors, they just solely relied on the outer ultrasound, where they didn't see anything, and they just assumed that I wasn't far along. They assumed that I didn't know roughly how far along that I was, and so they told me to wait a few weeks in order to get the procedure done, and maybe that's why they couldn't see anything. But even when I kept going back and I was telling them exactly where my pain was, and I was scared that there was a lot of pain. So I did even mention a couple times, is there a chance this could be ectopic? like
You
2 weeks
did,
before it
wow.
ruptured. And they're just like, nah, you're probably just not far along. Or another thing that they went off of was my labs. When you're pregnant, you have something called an HCG hormone, and that's normally a good indicator of your pregnancy being there. That's what pregnancy tests use to show whether it's positive or negative. And my hormones were going up, and then all of a sudden they went down. And they used that to assume that I must have been having a miscarriage. And from there they said, go bleed it out at home.
Mm,
Um,
wow.
I'm not sure why so many signs were missed. Um,
Well, it
it,
seems like cost cutting or not caring. Like they say, well, you probably are whatever. Okay, but what's the cost to check? I mean, the cost if they're wrong is the possibility that you could die. You talked about them only wanting to use the results of the external ultrasound. You requested a more detailed ultrasound, right?
that's right. And I think I would hope not, but I think that part of why I get dismissed is I did do a lot of research, not necessarily like, ooh, the WebMD, I know more than you, doctor, but I think that's what doctors assume patients do. And then that kind of makes them feel more inclined to shrug them off, like, I'm the one who went to medical school. You did a 5-minute Google search. But I didn't do a 5-minute Google search. Like, when something's wrong with me, and maybe this is relatable to a lot of other women who, are having pain and they keep getting dismissed, you do more research for yourself in that moment. And I think maybe that's part of why I would get dismissed, as well as, the cost of these extra tests or imaging. And especially with Kaiser Permanente, I feel like they're kind of notorious for skimming things, doing whatever they can to save a buck, which is unfortunate because Kaiser Permanente is a very popular insurance provider across the country, but especially in Southern California.
Yeah. I don't want to. I just want to make sure that people understand how many signs were missed. So you talk about in the video that your stomach had continued to expand after they thought that your pregnancy had ended, right? And they said that it was from food. Like that's
Yes.
just madness in hindsight. That like it's such a devotion to. I already understand what's happening. I'm not going to allow something like her body literally changing shape to dissuade me from my theory about it, even if the risk is that she could be seriously, permanently injured as a result of this.
And the thing that was so funny about that was, because they started telling me that, after it had ruptured and my stomach was growing because I was bleeding internally. And that's why my stomach was growing so dramatically. But the night that it ruptured, I was in immense pain. I could barely walk. And I, once I got back from the bathroom, because, I spent some time in there because I didn't know what was happening. I went back to the bathroom and I went to my partner. I was like, something's wrong. My lower abdominal areas, I'm in so much pain. And he's like, yeah, maybe it's the Del Taco we had last night. My stomach kind of hurts too. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess if he has stomach pain, then that's probably what mine is. It's probably not a big deal. So just like little things all around it from all the people that I talked to just kind of made me second guess myself. Like, it's probably not that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really the tragedy of it is that there were so many levels where in theory people could have understood or cared to understand or helped, or society could have been slightly changed so that you would have felt more comfortable to say something differently or do something different. And so this isn't like one of the videos where I necessarily know what the clean solution to this is supposed to be, but it certainly seems like there are a lot of things that could be different, small or large things that would stop these sorts of situations from happening. This isn't, this is a terrible tragedy that happened to you, and versions of this have happened to many women. So what do you hope now? A lot of people have seen your video. They know a little bit more about your experience being covered in the news. What do you hope comes of this?
I hope that women's pain will be taken more seriously because I'm just, speaking out about it. I happen to have a platform, but Most people, the average person, does not. And their pain gets dismissed all the time. So I would hope that, not just people who work in medicine, but just everybody who watches it can learn that this is a huge issue. Even if you just read the comments, there are so many women who experience getting their pain dismissed, and as a result, they get even more hurts. So I would hope that if you are either not a woman and maybe a woman is your partner, you would help advocate for her. Or if you do work in medicine, you would take women's pain more seriously, because in the end it's going to save money, because then people will not have to have life-saving surgery. If it was not for my insurance plan, even though I do kind of blame them for what happened, but I looked at the explanation of benefits for how much my surgery and emergency care would have cost, and it was about $50,000 if I did not have insurance.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah. And in the end, for the insurance, if they had discovered it earlier, it might have saved a ton of money and resulted in, less suffering, less pain for you.
Absolutely. And can I just mention one more thing? I didn't touch upon this in the video, and I wish that I did, but when I first went to Kaiser Permanente about this and I told them that I didn't want to proceed with the pregnancy, they refused to do the procedure. They had to refer me out to Planned Parenthood. But it's not that they weren't capable of it, because the surgical procedure is called like a D&C, D and C, not D&C. And so it wasn't until I was dying in the ER that they had the on-call surgeon come in, and before they went in laparoscopically, like through my belly button and cutting through my abdomen, they did perform a D and C, which is so weird that Kaiser Permanente refused to do the procedure when it was elective for me in order to end the pregnancy. But then once I was finally dying, they were okay to do it. And I thought that was so weird. For one of the biggest insurance providers in Southern California, Kaiser Permanente had to refer me out instead of doing it themselves when they were more than capable of doing it. That was shocking the more I thought about it.
Yeah, and there's a lot I'm sure that I don't understand, but at that point, it seems like they're just covering their ass at that point, potentially. Again, it's still, at the end of the day, it's still not about you as a person, it's about their bottom line. Great medical system that we have in this country. Certainly shouldn't reform it, literally ever. Well, look, we've touched on a couple different parts of this. I want to make sure that people get the full story from you. So where can people watch this video?
Sure, you can watch this video on my channel, youtube.com/Abelina, Abelina Sabrina. Like John said, the video is titled "My Pregnancy." And I also just want to highlight, I do fully respect people who do work in medicine and healthcare. It is a tough job and burnout happens. And maybe that also had something to do with my treatment. But Kaiser Permanente workers are striking lately, and this isn't to bash the actual workers. And so I hope that maybe we can, if the workers are treated a little bit better, maybe there will be less burnout, maybe they'll be able to catch mistakes. So support and solidarity to these striking Kaiser Permanente workers.
That's a great point. Thank you, Sabrina. Appreciate you joining us and talking about your experience.
Thank you, John.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.